Now let's see this deadlock prevention method. So in order to know what is prevention is, see, for a deadlock to happen, there are four necessary conditions, and if all these necessary conditions hold together, all of them, then only deadlock would be possible. Right now, if you could, disable at least one of the condition, then we can completely avoid the deadlock. It is like this: deadlock is a chair or a table standing on four legs, right? And all these four legs should be there if the table has to stand, and if you could pull one of the legs, then the deadlock will fall. So that is how you could fail the deadlock, or that is how you could prevent the deadlock, right? So what are the four conditions? If you remember it, I told you that there are four necessary conditions for a deadlock to happen, right? So first necessary condition is mutual exclusion, which means the main reason why the deadlock will happen is because a resource will not lend itself to be used by more than one process. Then what happens? When this resource is currently being held by one process, other process will try to access this resource, and that is how these two processes will fall in the deadlock. Are you getting this? See, how will the deadlock happen is, there will be some resource, right, and there will be some process. Now this resource will be taken by this process, and which means while this process is using this resource will not lend itself to be used by some other process, and that is how the deadlock will be causing, right? So which means some other process P2 might ask for the access to this resource, but this resource is saying that I am already being used by P1 and you cannot use me again, right? And now at the same time, this P2 might be holding some resource R2, and which also doesn't lend itself to be used by more than one process, and P1 wants it, right? Therefore there is a cycle here, right? And if this is the case, that is how the cycle is possible. If you see this, that is the case how the cycle is possible. The main culprit here is the resource. Resource is saying that more than one process cannot use me at the same time. Now if you could somehow disable that requirement, that if you could make every resource to be used by more than one process at the same time, maybe deadlock will never happen, right? Why? Because if these two processes want this resource, just give it to both of them and they'll finish their execution. But what is the problem with that? Just think about this scenario. Let us say we have a printer, and it can be used at any time by only one process, and at the same time if you give two processes, right, and the printer is being used by two processes, now one process will be trying to print something on the printer, and suddenly it gets preempted and the second process will start printing. Therefore your output printed on the paper will be a combination of the results produced by P1 as well as P2, two processes, right, which is nothing but a chaos, right? So we don't want that situation. So this disabling this one is really difficult. So disabling mutual exclusion, which means making a resource which has to be accessed in a mutual exclusion manner, disabling that is really dangerous. I mean, it is not physically possible, it is not feasible at all. Then what is the solution is, if you have any device like a printer, you can use pooling methods. Pooling method is, if you want the printer, let us say this is the printer, right, then you just say what you want to do with the printer. You just write the job there, you just give the job to the printer as a process, and you go and you just leave the place, and next process will come and then it will give the job to the printer, and then next process will come and will give the job to the printer, and they will leave, they will not worry about it, right? And later at some point of time, the printer daemon, right, there will be daemon process. This daemon process will take the jobs one by one and then it will start printing. Therefore the processes are not actually printing, competing for printer, they will be competing for the spool memory, right? This is called spooling. So they will just drop their jobs in this spool, and then later printer daemon will take each job and then print it. Therefore now only one process, even though we have so many processes which wants to access the printer, now we resolved everything, or we combined all the process in such a way that there will be only one process which will now compete for the printer. That is nothing but the printer daemon. Now this printer daemon will take the jobs one by one and it will schedule them to the printer. Therefore at any time only one process will be accessing the printer. That is how you could some way, I mean for some of the resources you could use this solution and avoid the deadlock. But the problem is, this is not a feasible solution for all the resources, and in fact even it is not feasible for the printer also. Even though process are now not competing for the printer, they will now compete for this memory. isn't it? Now many processes will try to write the jobs in this memory, and this memory will get full, the disk space will get full, and therefore again the process have to wait for this one, right? So it cannot be completely avoided, or you cannot use this as a solution. Disabling mutual exclusion as a solution in order to prevent the deadlock, it is not physically possible. To some extent yes, but 100% no, which means you cannot using this solution, you cannot completely solve the problem. To some extent yes. And next one is hold and wait. So if you want to if you want processes not to hold one resource and then wait for other resource, see, like this, hold and wait is like this. This process is holding this resource and then waiting for this resource, right? So this is one more necessary condition. If you have to disable this, then what should happen is, the solution is request all the resources initially. So if you want the resources R1 and R2 as P1, then you request them initially, and in case if you don't get both of them simultaneously, then never start it at all, right? Then what happens? This one will not be started, then only one process will be started, because at least one process will get all the resources. That is how we can avoid it, right? See, what I mean to say is, watch it, I want to disable hold and wait, right? Which means I don't want hold and wait. Then what should happen? I should not hold or I should not wait, isn't it? Now if you don't want to wait, then hold, get all the resources at the beginning, right? So which means if this process wants 2 resources, you are supposed to ask them before execution. If both of them are available, then only you are supposed to run, otherwise don't run, right? And what about not hold? Not hold means, in case if you found out that you need one more resource, now you have started, and in case this is second strategy. See, one strategy is this: get all the resources, then only you start. If you don't get, don't start. That is nothing but requesting all the resources initially. And the other strategy is don't hold. Don't hold means, if you want to make a request for a new resource, you release all the resources you are holding, and then you make the request for all the resources together. That is a better thing. Either you don't hold or you don't wait, right? So if you can do this, the second condition can be this second condition does not hold, and therefore deadlock prevention is possible. But the problem with this approach is, there is a small glitch here. The problem is, before you start running, a process starts running, how can it say what are all the resources it might need during the execution? That is very difficult thing, right? Because while the process is running, at some point of time it will contain an instruction which will demand a resource. Therefore we cannot predict well ahead how many resources we need and what resources we need. So that is the problem. Therefore, disabling this condition practically is a problem, because in order to guess the requirement, it is very difficult. In case if you could have a mechanism using which you could guess the requirement, method, which means if a process has the capacity to give you all the resources, to mention all the resources that it might need, then you will never go for this method at all. The best method possible will be deadlock avoidance. Even deadlock avoidance will also have the same problem. The problem is, a process will not be able to declare its need well ahead of its execution. During the execution it can say that I need it, but then before execution it cannot say that I need it. So that is a problem here, right? So hold and wait disabling is somewhat, I can say, I don't really suggest that. See, so this is practically not possible, and this is also practically not possible because of the restriction that process will not be able to declare its need well ahead of execution, right? And so next one is no preemption. So what is no preemption? No preemption says that while a process is using a resource, we are not supposed to pull it away forcefully, right? That is no preemption. Now if I have to break this condition, it is nothing but preemption, right? Which means take resources away, right? It is obviously not a good approach. While some resource is being used by a process, if you take it away, then completely whatever the process has been running till now, it cannot continue further. For example, if a printer has been printing something, and if you have pulled out the printer away and if you have directly given it to the other one, the results which are produced by the process one will become inconsistent, and again you cannot restart from the place where you have pulled it out, right? Therefore, again, no preemption is also not a practical condition to be implemented. So now all these three conditions cannot be disabled practically. So now out of no choice, we are left with only one option. What is it? Disable the circular weight. So how to disable the circular weight is, now what is circular weight is, see, so what they say is, you number all the resources and then you ask for the resources only in the increasing order. So whenever you ask for a resource, if a process wants to ask for a resource, it should ask for a resource which is great. Okay, like this. I'll just use the diagram and I'll show you. And let us say all the resources are numbered like this: R1, R2, R3, R4, so on, right? And now a process P1 is supposed to request, if it requested process number resource number R2, and if it got it, then it should not ask for R1 again. It should ask for something greater than this, right? And if other process, let us say P2 has requested for R2, it should not ask for again less than this. It should only ask for something greater than this, like this. So if every process is going to ask for the resources in the increasing order, then obviously no process will again come back and ask for the lower number. Therefore, there will not be any cycle, isn't it? See this here. How did this deadlock happen? Because R1 is being, P1 is holding R1 and it could request for R2, it is fine. But then P2 is holding R2, but it is coming back and requesting for R1. In case if it doesn't request it, if it is supposed to request only higher numbers, right? Then this, in the first place, it will not happen. So if it requests R1 and R2, let it ask for R1 first and then R2, depending on the increasing order of the resources, right? If we can make sure that such a thing happens, then we can avoid this circular weight, right? So the procedure is number all the resources, give them some ordering, and then a process should be restricted in such a way that it should ask only for the resources in the increasing order. In case at any point of execution, if it requires any resource which is lower than the resources which it already holds, then it is supposed to release all the resources it is holding. Then only it can make the request for the lower one. If we can enable this, then the problem can be solved. And this is the only problem which can be implemented practically. And all the other these conditions cannot be implemented practically here, because we don't need a process to declare its need way ahead of its execution. As and when it wants a resource, it is just supposed to see whether the resource number is in the increasing order. If it is in the increasing order, it can place the request. If it has to ask for a resource which is at a lower number than the resources which it already holds, it is supposed to release all the resources and again start from the beginning, right? So using which we can disable this circular weight, which means order the resources numerically and then keep on ordering them in the increasing order. Therefore, this cycle will not occur, the circular weight will not occur, right? So this is one of the methods which is generally used in the real-time systems, where if you really want no deadlock to happen, and if you don't want a lot of time wasting in detecting the deadlock and then recovering from it, then go for it. So it will completely prevent it. Understood this? So this is how the deadlock can be prevented.